I forgot just how much presence these things have.
Yes, these were designed and made during Mitsubishi's peak reliability era, but they're getting old now, so they do have some issues.
Because these are actually affordable, I'm happy to have a bit of a punt on a public road. So for 3 decades, these things have never received the same levels of adoration or love as, say, a Nissan GTR or a Toyota Supra or a Mazda RX-7. But compared to those cars, are these things a bargain? Do they actually deserve some love? Or have the years been very unkind to them? Tell you what, how about we show you how they're aging, what they're like to drive, most importantly, what goes wrong with them. But before we get to all of that, we do need to decipher what is the Mitsubishi GTO or 3000 GT. Produced during a golden era for Japanese manufacturing, Mitsubishi threw everything at their flagship model performance car. All-wheel drive, adaptive dampers, all-wheel steering, active aerodynamics, even a bimodal exhaust system. And remember, we are talking early 1990s here. That was all supercar level stuff at the time. Engine-wise, all variants will feature a 3-litre V6. While a few are naturally aspirated, the majority on the used market here in Australia feature a twin turbo setup. However, the turbo models, it isn't just a case of bolting a couple of turbos onto the naturally aspirated engine. There's a host of other mechanical changes to those things, which Jim will explain when we get to his bit soon. Actually, just on the 6G72 engine, that thing has powered a whole host of different Mitsubishis and Chryslers and Dodges, even a Hyundai. Ready to see the list? Check this out. Now, what these are even called will vary depending on where you're watching this from. In Japan, it's a GTO. That's why the great imports are GTOs. Everywhere else in the world, it's pretty much a Mitsubishi 3000 GT. However, in North America, some may refer to it there as the Dodge Stealth, plus a few of their base spec examples were available with front-wheel drive only. That's not all though, the model also received 3 revisions during its life cycle. Firstly, in 1994, gaining more tech and features, more power and a few aesthetic changes, which included losing these awesome pop-up headlights. Boo. Then another update in 1997 brought with it a subtle facelift. However, a number of features like the active aero and adaptive dampers were dropped thanks to slowing sales and the falling value of the yen. And finally, in 1999, gaining a more aggressive body treatment, including the VR4's inverted airfoil spoiler called the Combat Wing. Plus, like all great Japanese cars, there's then a laundry list of different variants. Now, interestingly, even though these things haven't received the same adoration as a bunch of other JDM hero cars, these actually outsold the Nissan 300ZX, the Toyota Supra and the Mazda RX-7 combined. However, these days with pricing ranging from about $10,000 to $70,000, it does face some pretty stiff competition. For example, if you want all-wheel drive, a punchy engine, sports car kind of driving dynamics and a sexy coupe body, you get your hands on an Audi TT or an A5 or maybe even an S5 Quattro, maybe an R33 Skyline GTS4 or possibly even a pretty tired R32 Skyline GTR. You could even sneak yourself into an AMG C43, a Porsche 996 Carrera 4 or maybe even the utterly beautiful Alfa Romeo Brera. But no matter what car you're looking at, even if it's an import, if you're after car finance, you just have to hit the driver link down below. Driver will source you the very best finance package from loads of different lenders. It's honestly the fastest and easiest process that we have ever experienced, and the whole thing's completely free and it's going to have no impact on your credit score. Now let's talk looks and exterior for a moment. I forgot just how much presence these things have. And it's interesting because it's actually smaller in every dimension than the current BMW M2, but it's just, it feels and looks substantial. But you know what else is substantial? Its actual weight. Thanks to the all-wheel drive system and four-wheel steering, this thing weighs close enough to 1,700 kilos. That was more than the BMW M5 of the era. Also, it is a clearly very 90s design. I feel like there was a period where this aesthetic maybe wasn't appreciated, but with all things 90s being cool again, yeah, it rocks. However, it's not all good news for the exterior. Not only have plenty of these been just ruined with shitty mods, with so many features and complexity, quite a few things can go wrong with the exterior. Firstly, with the turbo models or the models with the active aerodynamics, quite a few owners have reported that the active aero just stops working or works unevenly. Plus, if you have an accident, just replacing those troublesome parts, it can be a bit of a nightmare. Also with the pop-up headlights, do they work on all of their functions? Do they kind of foul on the bodywork at all? They shouldn't. Make sure you check all the seals and the rubbers around the doors, especially the outer door rubber, because it can degrade over time. Now at this age, you can expect a few little scratches and dings, but with these being one of the more affordable JDM Halo cars, quite a few owners have been on the tightest of budgets, so make sure you go over the entire exterior, look for accident damage or even worse, dodgy repair work. Now the red models, apparently they're very susceptible to paint fade, especially if they haven't been cared for with quality products. Okay, now the electronically controlled suspension. There can be a host of issues here. Most of them all relate to age. Now, if the light on the actual selector switch is flashing, that could be as simple as just a wire to the sensor playing up, but it also might be the ECS controller. And the problem with that is Mitsubishi don't make that ECS controller anymore. If the light on the selector doesn't show up at all, it might just be a blown bulb, or it might be the fact that the seller has removed the bulb to try to hide other insidious issues. And because of how complex this system can be, plenty of owners out there just disconnect the whole system and just go and install modern suspension. But it is a big, heavy car, so to perform at its best, it has to be on quality coilovers. Cheap coilovers are not going to do the job. Now, common complaints and issues inside, make sure all of the buttons actually work. We're talking the climate control, window buttons, the mirror buttons. Basically, if it has electricity running to it, does it still work? Now, if it doesn't, it might actually be a really simple fix, like just a replacement switch or an actuator, something like that. It might be a more insidious issue, like the capacitors in the actual ECU that control it might be leaking or breaking down. Although in saying that, plenty of owners have replaced capacitors relatively easily, so if something doesn't work, it's not necessarily the end of the world. Also, when you initially turn the ignition on, do all of the lights actually light up? If they don't, is that an owner that has removed the bulb to try to hide a larger issue? Now at this age, most will feature some sort of aftermarket head unit and probably some other aftermarket gear here and there. Are they quality components and have they been installed professionally? Now quite a few owners mentioned that this sun can be really harsh on some of the interior plastics and fabrics and things like that. Interestingly, to fix it, there are quite a few people 3D printing some plastic parts. Getting the original trim fabric can be expensive, but if it has been retrimmed or there's some replacement parts here and there, that's to be expected. Bit of a fun fact as well, quite a few of the owners that are in the know mention that these interiors handle sun and are more resilient, far better than Nissans and Mazdas. Actually, just on how the interiors hold up and how resilient they are, in this car, this thing has nearly 200,000 Ks on it, and overall it's pretty good. The plastics in here are all wearing really well. Also, they're not hard plastics, they're all kind of soft, squidgy, soft touch plastics. The seat fabrics, on the passenger seat, quite good. They're under here, I'll show you. Not too bad, but on the driver's seat, yeah, the driver's seat has maybe seen some better days. Also, this is a bit annoying, and some of the roof fabrics are looking a little bit gross, but not too bad. Under the steering wheel, yeah, the leather on the steering wheel is starting to peel away, but you know, it's pushing 30 years old, nearly 200,000 Ks, that's to be expected. But then all the switch gear, it all still feels really good to use. Now elsewhere inside, it feels far more spacious than I was expecting. I thought it'd feel, not Mazda MX-5 small, but a little bit, you know, RX-70, but it doesn't. It's quite a comfortable place to be. Love the design in here as well, the 3 gauges across the top, just love the design. Ergonomics, interesting. Again, I was expecting it to feel far more actual sports performance car, but it doesn't. It feels a little bit, well, it's a GT. It does feel more sort of GT cruisery. In saying that, quite a few owners did comment that they can't quite get totally comfortable, or their heads are hitting the roof a little bit. I do sit quite low, but yeah, a few owners not that into the seating position. Actually, just on the owners, Michael, mate, you legend, thank you so much for lending us your car. And also, the GTO and 3000 GT owners groups, some of the best we've ever dealt with. Thank you so much for helping us research this video. Your knowledge is incredible. Especially Daniel Stalker, mate, you're like the GTO 3000 GT Wikipedia in human form. Mate, thank you so much. Now, as far as practicality up front, it is a sports car, so don't go expecting far too much. You do have pretty good sized consoles here with a couple of cup holders, good spot for your phone just there. A 3D printed cup holder just here. There's a glove box, but that latch isn't really working at the moment, so we're not going to try to open that. And that's about it. No real door pockets there, nothing under here, nothing under the seats. It's a GT car. Of course it doesn't have great practicality up front. Now, as far as features and equipment go, yes, this was the flagship Mitsubishi at the time, but the time was the 1990s, so let's not go expecting too much. You'll get all the stuff you'd expect, like climate control, air conditioning, power windows and mirrors, remote central locking, a CD player, leather interior, but there are a few tasty surprises too. Many models will have power adjustable seats, a premium hi-fi, and if you manage to find one of the incredibly rare Beckenbauer editions, a CNET's mobile phone system. All models will also come standard with windscreen wipers, but like all OEM cars, the cost of wiper blades can be ridiculous. Also, trying to decipher which ones to buy from the thousands on offer at your local parts shop, that can be a nightmare. Luckily, WiperTech can help with that. If you click the link down there, you're going to get 15% off and free express shipping on, honestly, some of the best wiper blades we've ever used. And they're easy to order, and they're super easy to fit. Now, as far as safety features go, well, it has all-wheel drive, so you're sort of winning the battle against physics straight away. But to take you through the safety features that you can expect, it does seem only right that we do this in a period-correct 3000 GT TV ad kind of style.
The Mitsubishi 3000 GT with all-wheel steering, ABS brakes, seatbelts and driver and passenger airbags. While it might not be great at keeping you safe and healthy, it will make you feel alive.
Now, if you do need all the specific details on these things, or the ultimate 3000 GT GTO buyer's guide, go to ReDriven.com and check out the completely free cheat sheet because it'll answer all of your questions. Now, in the back seat, I'm exactly 13 centimeters taller than a celebrity 3000 GT owner, comedian Eddie Murphy. This is in my driving position, and look, I know it technically has back seats, but why? Because you could never sit back here if you were any kind of grown adult. In saying that, with how concaved the base of the seat is, my bum's really comfy. Besides that, wear and tear back here, even though it is 30 years old and has nearly 200,000 Ks on it, no wear and tear because no one would be stupid enough to sit back here. And practicality? Nope. Now, practicality in the boot, thanks to the lift gate, is actually pretty practical back here. Also, like all good GTOs and 3000 GTs, this one has a sub in the boot. Interestingly, the seats, they do fold completely flat. So if this wasn't here, you've actually got a fair amount of space. It's, yeah, bloody practical. Now, there are so many misconceptions about the driving experience in these and their levels of performance, but the general public just get it wrong all the time. See, the 3000 GT, it was never intended to be some track-dominating performance car like so many of its counterparts. This was designed to be a GT. Mitsubishi had the Lancer Evo for all the hardcore performance stuff. The hint to its Grand Touring target is kind of in the name, 3000 GT or GTO. This thing was meant to just be able to soak up thousands of kilometers of distance while still packing a pretty decent punch. But when appreciated just for what it is, even after 3 decades, they're still so impressive. Now, the eagle-eyed of you might have noticed that this is one of the lesser appealing models because it's an auto and it's naturally aspirated, but even then it's still a pretty bloody good thing. Now look, yes, these are a heavy car, but thanks to the 4-wheel steering and the light steering calibration, it feels far more agile than you're expecting. It seems to hide its substantial weight. It feels like the car shrink wraps around you, and it never feels cumbersome. Even if you're reverse parking or dealing with a tight driveway, it never feels too big. But then that substantial mass gives it this feeling of confidence on the road. It just feels so planted all the time. Even the ride quality, again, 30 years old, nearly 200,000 Ks. This is the standard suspension, and the ride quality is really good. This could teach a lot of modern performance cars a thing or two about just ride quality. Also, I'm really surprised at how few rattles and squeaks and weird noises there are in here compared to loads of other 90s and early 2000s JDM stuff we've reviewed. This sounds amazing, although the exhaust is a bit drony. Now, one area that these things really do dominate their competition is just in the levels of stress that you experience when you're driving. With so many of those JDM Hero or Halo cars costing $100,000, $200,000, even more, every time you drive it, you're just petrified something is going to go wrong, and it doesn't exactly encourage you to take it out on a daily basis. Because these are actually affordable, I'm happy to have a bit of a punt on a public road. Now, yes, this is the naturally aspirated model, but I do have it on very good authority that the turbocharged models, well, they lift the whole driving experience to all new heights. Now, that's saying something because this engine, like, okay, it's not brain-meltingly fast at all, but it's also certainly no slouch, and it's just really enjoyable to rev it out and have a bit of a go. Add the surge of a couple of turbos, and yeah, I could totally understand how this would be an addictive driving experience. But talking about the engines and turbos, that does bring up the conversation regarding mechanical reliability. What mechanically can go wrong with these? I can't tell you. I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim.
The Mitsubishi 6G7 family of engines were the V6 workhorse for Mitsubishi from the 80s right up till about 2005, and widely considered to be very reliable, although even back then, right through in every version of these, they seem to nearly all have issues with their valve stem seals. And you'll know that because if you're ever sitting behind one of these in traffic, they stick. It's just a V6 Mitsubishi thing. In these, the ones with the NA engine, they are very watered down compared to the twin turbo versions. The underpinnings of those are more like a TR Magna, which I can tell you was never meant to be a performance car. As Adam alluded to, the turbo versions are a very different beast, and there's a lot more going on underneath there, but there's also more to go wrong. But in saying that, they were never considered unreliable. But nowadays, it's just mostly old car things you need to look out for, especially timing belts on these things. And basically everything made of rubber is less rubbery than it used to be, and all the wiring connections and coolant fittings, they're all going to be very fragile, so you need to keep an eye on them. As I mentioned, the valve stem seals on these, they just pump out smoke when they're sitting idling for long periods of time. Look, to fix that properly these days, the heads have to come off and the heads have to be fully done up. It's not cheap, but it does make a huge difference. The ECUs in the Gen 1 and 2 are pretty fragile. They tend to melt their boards and the capacitors just burst. They can be repaired, but the Gen 3 ECU apparently does fit and work in these. The trouble is finding one. They're getting hard to get now. The normally aspirated versions of these with the automatic transmission, it's a Mitsubishi transmission and it's not too bad. The problem there is the transmission control unit. They can fail, and when they do, they are extremely hard to find replacements and almost impossible to fix too. The all-wheel drive versions of the Gen 1 has a transfer case made of cheese and is exactly good for 3 launches before it breaks in half. Thankfully, the later Gen 2 and 3, they had a transfer case made of a more appropriate material called steel, which is way stronger and interchangeable with the earlier model. The twin turbo models with the manual transmission, that's actually a Getrag unit, which is pretty stout. It does have issues with synchros, and you can buy very expensive carbon fibre replacements for those, which do help. But if the gearbox should have a catastrophic failure, they are eye-wateringly expensive to repair and very difficult to find parts for. And when I say eye-wateringly expensive, I'm talking like 5,000 or 6,000 and up. Being old and a somewhat affordable performance car, one of the biggest issues you're likely to have is neglect or results of shitty mods. If you're buying one, just look out for some of those mods. It's bound to have some, but hopefully the one you're looking at has had some decent mods. Now, just on those mods, now according to owners in the know, bang for your buck performance on these things, money spent per horsepower, they actually yield better results than some of the equivalents like your R32 GTRs and some of your Supras. And speaking of people in the know, and I know Adam touched on this earlier, but Daniel, you have been a huge help with the research for this. And any of you that have one of these or looking to buy one, and if you need parts or knowledge, look Daniel up. We're going to put his link in the description below.
Okay, so after all of that, should you buy one of these? Well, it's funny, because when they were new, this was arguably the worst out of the gate of all of the JDM Halo performance cars. But these days, used, it might actually be the one to get. No matter what 90s JDM legend you might be looking at, they will all require care, attention, and a substantial savings account to keep them at their best. Where the 3000 GT differs though is that these are often asking tens of thousands of dollars less than all of the other JDM competitors. Plus, a 3000 GT is potentially more usable and easier to live with, and with the right mods can more than hold its own when it comes to sheer performance. Interestingly, the cost of those mods and even general maintenance can often be more affordable when compared to the more obvious GTR and Supra and RX-7 alternatives too. Just find the perfect example, make sure you have it thoroughly pre-purchase inspected before you buy it, maybe have quite a few $1,000s stashed away somewhere to maintain it accordingly, and yeah, if it ticks those boxes, get one, because it can be a bloody phenomenal car. Or if you do have loads of money to burn, maybe consider one of these instead. But if you weren't to buy this or this, what would you buy? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. A whole bunch of other Mitsubishis and Dodges and Chryslers. But no matter what car you're looking at, even if it is an import, I'm gonna fall over.
And there's a lot more going on.